Absolutely amazing. Here we go. Okay, so welcome everybody to the latest JoDo webinar. Today is the 14th of February, Valentine's Day 2022, and I am absolutely thrilled to be hosting a webinar with Wendy Maxwell, the Wendy Maxwell, and Pauline Galea as well, who are going to be talking to us for the next hour all about the AIM approach of teaching languages. And we're going to find out all about how the strategies that we're going to learn about from Wendy and from Pauline have been successful in the languages classroom. And I cannot wait. So thank you so much, ladies, for agreeing to present today. And I'd like to hand over now to Wendy to kick us off, maybe to tell us a little bit about yourselves, the introduction, and then tell us all about AIM. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, very much. It's just a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for organizing it. I know Pauline and I have been looking forward to this for a very long time, so it's lovely to be here. So today we're going to be talking about how AIM, the Accelerative Integrated Methodology, which is the full name of AIM, rapidly develops proficiency. And we're going to go through some background. We're going to show you some videos and some examples of student work, and hopefully have a lovely conversation with all of you. And of course, looking forward to your questions should we not answer something that you have a question about. So Pauline, maybe perhaps we'll just start, and would you like to introduce yourself and share a bit about who you are?
I will, and I'll apologize ahead of time if we lose audio. I seem to be having a few glitches with my internet. So Wendy, if we lose me, could you please just let me know and I can repeat what I say. Technology. So salut tout le monde. Je suis très contente d'être ici aujourd'hui avec vous. And I'm Pauline Galea, and I'm an AIM certified teacher. I've been a teacher in Ontario, Canada since 2002. I started using AIM exclusively in 2004 to teach core French. Now in Canada, core French students receive 30 to 40 minutes of French daily. So about 200 minutes per week they receive of French. So that's core French teachers. And in Ontario, core French usually starts in grade 4 and goes to grade 8. So I've taught all those levels of French. I've also taught, and I'm teaching this year, grade 1 French immersion. And this year and last year, I'm doing it totally online. So as part of the COVID pandemic. So I've been totally online teaching little grade 1 students who have never spoken French before how to teach French, or how to speak French and read and write and understand French. So that's what I'm doing right now. I have quite a diverse portfolio. One thing that's been very constant in my career, though, from day one, is the use of AIM. And I'll quickly tell you why. That's because when I first saw AIM, we had Edith, a friend of Wendy's, came to do a workshop at my school district. And she showed some videos, which you're going to see some today. And when I saw those videos, I was la bouche bée. My mouth just dropped. I could not believe what I was seeing. I could not believe that these children were speaking French the way they were, because I'd never seen that in my life. I'd never experienced as a core French student growing up in the system, and I never experienced it as a teacher. So when I first saw these children speaking, well, first of all, I thought they were immersion students, because immersion students are totally immersed in the language for all the subjects all day. So I thought they were immersion students. But no, they were core French students who were only getting very limited time daily. So I was quite amazed. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I knew right from that moment that that's what I wanted for my students. And I knew that that's what I wanted for myself as a teacher.
Okay, well, thank you, Pauline. That's quite an introduction. Thanks so much. And I know you'll share a bit more about what AIM is as we go through this presentation. I'm Wendy Maxwell. I developed the methodology that Pauline was describing. She decided to use many years ago. And I started to develop it prior to, of course, that around, well, the early 1990s is when I began. And the reason why I began to implement AIM is because my students were not able to speak, read, or write in the language. I I was a former French immersion teacher, as Pauline is now. My students were doing fairly well in the language, but I moved to teach core or FSL, which was 30 minutes every day in a very good school with parents who supported, ideal for teaching languages. So I expected the students to do fairly well in French after 5 to 7 years. But unfortunately, when I entered this school, my expectations were not met. The kids could not speak, read, or write in the language even after 5, 6, or 7 years of instruction, French every single day. And I thought, well, this cannot be happening. I learned French at high school, pretty easily through grades 9 to 13. And I didn't know what was going on. So I realized subsequently that actually from a researcher at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education at the University of Toronto, who said that there is very little proficiency actually in core French. Only about 4% of the population actually acquire language that way. So this is what the way that was being taught at the time, which was sort of a communicative, thematic approach with a little bit of focus on grammar. So I realized that if my students were going to be able to acquire the language rapidly, as I wanted them to do, I had to do something differently. So that's how AIM began. And so AIM is a very accelerative methodology. It's an integrated methodology. It's basically a content-based approach where learning from my experience as an immersion teacher, teaching language through another subject area is very beneficial. You're not only teaching the language for language sake, actually, you're not just doing that, you're teaching other areas of the curriculum through the language. So I decided that what would be best is to use a literacy and arts-based approach, highly engaging, opportunities for lots of what we call pleasant repetition, and music, choreography as well, combined with that literacy and theater arts component. So basically that's where we teach, through which we teach AIM and French, so, and Spanish and Mandarin and Japanese and English as well. It's a methodology because it is not just a standard program. It actually involves a series of techniques and strategies that when put together as a system work very, very well and are very, very powerful in helping students acquire language. So to give you a little taste of what an AIM classroom kind of looks like, and on the surface, you can see something very, very different, I'm sure. So let's have a quick look at AIM in different languages all over the world.
Everyone will do the song.
Ta grand-mère, parce que c'est la grand-mère de chaperon rouge et la mère part à chaperon rouge. Alors c'est ta grand-mère.
Tu es fantastique. La classe toma. Yo tomo.
Una persona importante o importante, entonces yo no hablo con tú, ok.
我要讲一个故事。小鸡住在农场里，一天小鸡出上学，一个小国家从小鸡的桌上。怎么了？哎呀，天塌了，天塌了！怎么？你去哪里？天塌，天塌吗？
Okay, so just a little overview. I'm sure what stood out for you most likely was the fact that the teacher is using gestures, and there's a lot of language production going on in an AIM classroom. It's a bit of a noisy and an engaging place for students to learn language. As many of the guidelines, including the CEFR, guidelines all over the world, are looking to the CEFR and their influence on guidelines, where we are looking now to authentic proficiency, And those can-do statements where we see the language levels of proficiency. And AIM has always been focused around the goal of authentic language proficiency. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, my students weren't speaking in the language. I had to make a change and make sure that they were gaining proficiency. And so this is what AIM has always been and currently continues to be about. And we're going to show you the different levels of proficiency that we can, that we've been able to achieve with students in different languages. And I noticed that some of you teach French, some of you teach French and Spanish, which is lovely. We have resources and training for teachers of those different languages, as you could see in the last video of other languages as well. So what AIM does best? Oh, Pauline?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in for 1 second, please, and jump off of something that you had said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in the system, in the core French system, and I never learned, no one taught me how to speak French. I was taught how to conjugate verbs. I was taught how to read and write. I was taught a little bit how to listen, and the last thing that I was taught to do was to speak in French. The only time I spoke in French was when I was reading or I had a text in front of me. So
Oh, I think you've frozen.
children, and we can teach students to speak without them having to have a text in front of them, which is very authentic, because that is what we really want. We want children, students to be able to communicate and to feel comfortable and not be afraid to make errors based on grammar-based thinking that they're trying to sort out in their head. So that's one thing that really, really made me have my mouth wide open about AIM, was because it really spoke to my own personal experience growing up trying to learn French, in the fact that my least proficient area of French vis-a-vis the CEFR was speaking or oral production.
Mm-hmm. And this is so common, Pauline. It's so common that this is a most difficult aspect of the language for students to acquire, and really where AIM's success lies. And so it is extremely important that we, especially as students get older, that we help them to be successful as quickly as possible. And if we wait 2 or 3 years before students are starting to speak, or sometimes never, it's going to devalue what you're offering to students in terms of your language course. So you want to make sure that very quickly, as we say here, it's a quick start success to language proficiency, with a focus on the development of oral language first. But of course, we do a lot of written language practice and development as well, a lot. So AIM is based on a lot of research. There's a lot of research in various areas that support what AIM offers, the brain-based research that supports the various techniques and strategies that we use. And we also have research on AIM specifically that we're happy to share with you. We can share links to those pieces of research. AIM is used all over the world. It's used actually primarily in Canada, where it began, but also the United States, in various countries in Europe, fairly extensively in Australia and the Netherlands particularly, and in other places as well. It began in the independent school system in Canada, but now is much more widely used in the public school system. A large percentage, as I mentioned, in Australia, the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, just a couple of years ago, there was a recent study on AIM. And out of that study, they determined that AIM students were rated the best classes in the Netherlands, and they outperformed students in the other 2 most popular programs used in that country in all language skills. In the United States, AIM students are winning national competitions, and it's used fairly broadly over there as well. So Pauline, would you like to just give an overview of the major components of the methodology for everyone?
Absolutely. So there are 5 major components to the AIM methodology. And for successful implementation of AIM, it's best to incorporate all 5 of these components. We found in the past that if teachers just focus on one area and maybe do not implement parts of other components, we don't get the level of proficiency that we know we can achieve. So the 5 major components are the gesture approach, which is the use of hand gestures to facilitate oral language. I'll give you a quick example. So for example, we teach the students that this means bonjour. So it gets to the point where I don't have to say anything. I just go like this and they produce the language. They're saying bonjour. Or I could say, we teach them, je m'appelle. So it can get to the point once they look at me going like this, that they're producing the language. They're saying, je m'appelle. My voice goes away. So what the gestures are like kinesthetic flashcards. And we know teaching any language, we use flashcards, but they eventually go away. We don't need them all the time. The really great thing about the gesture approach is the ability, the fact that each hand gesture is with a word so that we can string together whole sentences. It's not like holding up flashcards where they have to read it and we have to hold up a bunch of flashcards. We can just go like this and we can string a whole bunch of sentences together. I'll give you one more quick example. This is like, bonjour, je m'appelle Pauline, je suis une fille. J'ai des cheveux. Can describe all about themselves just by using gestures to facilitate their language. The second aspect of the AIM methodology is high frequency vocabulary, which is also known as pared down language. And Wendy did a lot of research to create this pared down language, high frequency words and words that have a huge scope. For example, the word eau. This is the gesture for water, eau. You can use this in various contexts. For example, I can say, je bois de l'eau, or I can say, je saute dans l'eau. So there's a wide scope of using the word eau. The same with the word shows, the word for thing, shows. That's a word that you can use in many contexts. If students don't know how to say a word, they don't have the vocabulary for it, they can just say chose. Je vois une chose. And then in the target language. So there's these high frequency vocabulary pared down words that Wendy did a lot of years researching and creating. And of course, the gestures and the high frequency vocabulary go together. The third component is stories, plays, music, theater, creative drama. And this is the high frequency words and the gestures contextualized. So all of the high frequency words don't live on their own. They're not, they're like a brick of a house. Think of a brick. If you have a pile of bricks on the ground, they don't mean much. They're just a pile of bricks and they're individual things, right? Now, once we start putting those bricks together and to build a house, it starts to take on meaning. So that's the same way when we contextualize the high frequency pared down language through gestures, and we contextualize them in stories, plays, music, and theater and drama. There's many, many plays, and Les Trois Petits Cochons, we have Boucle d'Or, or sorry, Boucle Violette, so many great stories that the kids can really relate to, and they're fun. They bring a lot of fun into the learning of language. The fourth item component is language manipulation activities, which are both oral and written. One interesting thing about AIM is that any writing activities that we do or reading activities are all done orally first, and they're done over and over. They're repeated, so the students become so comfortable with it, they learn what sounds right. They learn what sounds right. So then when it comes time for them to read it, or when it comes time for them to write it, it kind of just rolls off their tongue. So it comes off their tongue and it comes off the end of their pencil onto the piece of paper. These language manipulation activities, there's many different ones, which we're going to show you coming up, and highly repetitive through different kits or through different plays. The fifth component is transfer to spontaneous communication, both oral and written as well. And what this involves is being able to take the language that they've learned in the context of the play and apply it out as well. So we're going to be showing you examples of that as well coming up. Okay, Wendy?
Thank you, Pauline. That's wonderful. So let's have a look at a couple of videos here where you see the first one is a good French class, but it is not an AIM class.
Aujourd'hui, je suis très excitée parce que la semaine prochaine, je vais visiter mon ami qui habite à Winnipeg. C'est vrai, je suis née à Winnipeg et toute ma famille habite à Winnipeg. J'ai 2 sœurs et j'ai ma maman et mon papa qui habitent là. Alors, ma maman est tellement contente.
Okay, so this is great. The teacher is speaking only in the target language. She's sharing things about herself, connecting with the students. The students are listening. We don't know if they understand, but she's maintaining a target language only environment. This is the same teacher giving the class as an AIM teacher using some of the AIM strategies.
Habite à Winnipeg.
Pardon?
Winnipeg.
Excellent.
Alors, je vais
Continuez.
maintenant. Est-ce que tout le monde sait ou ne sait pas que je suis né à Winnipeg? Je sais. C'est vrai. Je suis né là-bas. Et j'ai aussi des amis que je peux visiter là-bas aussi. Et
Okay, so that gives you a little bit of a quick glance at one of the techniques that we use, which is called the gesture approach. And where the teacher is gesturing, the students are doing the talking. She's guiding the students through what we call, well, we would call spontaneous language production, but it's led by the teacher in a technique called teacher-led self-expression or spontaneous gesturing. So even pre-verbal students are getting that ongoing practice and confidence building as the teacher is gesturing for them to speak. I'm going to just, for the Spanish teacher, show you a little Spanish excerpt here. So everything that the teacher communicates to the students, whether it's just talking about himself or herself, sharing something, you know, some information, whether it's describing an activity that they're going to do, whether it's someone knocks on the door and they use gestures to describe that, whatever it might be, we are engaging the students in authentic language production by gesturing for them to speak. So it's a very, very useful tool to build confidence and proficiency. Of course, the students will be speaking on their own during what we call partner group activity time. What you were seeing was the teacher-led activity time or whole class time. So the pared down language, I think Pauline did a great job describing what that is. The most important element of it is the fact that we have selected a vocabulary that is essential vocabulary for the development of beginning proficiency so that students can build that foundation rapidly and have the tools that they need, the words that they need to begin to speak spontaneously in the language. And there are lots of elements to the pared down language, which I won't go into detail right now, but the most important thing to keep in mind is that we make sure that we're presenting students with that high frequency vocabulary, which isn't always the case what we see. And certainly I experienced when teaching in the thematic approach, I would teach sort of lists of of nouns, of clothing, or maybe sports or food or animals. That's not to say we don't teach those words, and we do in the pared down language, but we don't teach long lists of perhaps less frequently used fruits and vegetables, for example. And pared down language, another aspect of it, is very, very high emphasis on verbs, you may have noticed. So we have veut or quiere, and peut or puede, or sabe or je sais, for example. So words that may not necessarily, or doit, debe. So words that aren't necessarily, or that are more difficult to conjugate, are taught first because they are high frequency words. Now let's just have a look at this. The reason I decided to use story, excuse me, which becomes a theater piece, or and then moves into creative drama, is because I realized the benefit, not only from the perspective of engagement, where students are learning a play for presentation, they're excited about that, they work cooperatively with a group, they get to repeat the story over and over again, because actors do repeat and learn their roles, but also the fact that that stories throughout history have always been something that has engaged humans, and they're a wonderful starting point for literacy, of course. So this quote by David Booth, I just love it because it really sums up what we're doing. Children new to a language find in a story context for understanding. It's not word lists that command their attention, but the lives of characters that fill the tales they read or listen to. And how painful it must be for those children alien to a language to sit day after day without feeling connected. And yet through storying, how quickly they enter the activity, making sense of what is happening, and building their own versions, listening, telling, retelling, talking about, reflecting upon, and responding. So really, this sums up what we do. We want to work in depth with story, and in a foreign language environment, this is so important because the students come to know the characters, they know the context, they know the setting, they know the words in that story, so that then we can very easily take that story as a context to develop their language proficiency by asking them questions and having them manipulate the language based on the story. Yes, Pauline.
I was just going to add to that by saying there's an emotional connection.
Yes.
Through stories, there's an emotional connection, and we know from research as language learners that when emotion is brought into learning, the learning is deeper. It goes deeper into our long-term memory. That's why we can all remember songs that we sang when we were teenagers, but we can't remember what we ate for breakfast.
That's very true, Pauline. Yes, that attachment through emotion is so key, and so many things, not only the gestures and the way we express them, but the stories and all the songs and raps are filled with emotion. And so students actually store in different parts of their brain the information that they're gathering in an AIM classroom and that they're acquiring. So we've talked about these plays and these stories. Let's just have a quick little look at what they might look like.
Esta es la historia de Marco, el mago. Marco es el mejor mago del mundo y él sabe que es el mejor.
Soy Marco, el mejor mago del mundo. Todo el mundo piensa que mi magia es muy buena, pero yo no hago mi magia para todos. Oh, no. Solamente hago mi magia para las personas importantes.
Yo no sé dónde está el collar de la princesa. Yo lo busco y lo busco, pero no puedo encontrarlo. ¿Puede usted ayudarme? Oh, yo no quiero unas medias. Yo quiero el collar.
So there is lots of emotion embedded in the plays. This is a very tiny excerpt of a play and they usually last 10 to 15 minutes to present. So they're not little dialogues, they're full-length literacy pieces for the students to eventually perform. They're filled with emotion, lots of humor for the early stories, lots of repetition, so they're easy to acquire. Here's an excerpt of a French one.
Le guépard arrive à la maison du lion. Il parle avec lui.
Monsieur Lion, qu'est-ce qu'on fait? Il ne pleut pas depuis longtemps. Tout le monde a très soif. C'est un gros problème. Est-ce que tu peux nous aider? D'accord, Guépard. Tu dois aller à l'arbre Ungali, un arbre magique qui est loin d'ici dans la forêt. Tu dois dire le nom de l'arbre et après ça, l'arbre peut aider les animaux. Dis à l'arbre que tout le monde a soif parce qu'il n'y a pas d'eau. N'oublie pas, c'est l'arbre Ungali. Oh, merci, Monsieur Lion. Merci. Je cours à l'arbre maintenant. Au revoir.
All right, let's have a look now. I did mention that we have songs and raps as well. So here's an excerpt from one of our entry routines, which I'll give, we can explain a little bit after we view a bit.
La classe commence et tout le monde est prêt. On doit parler seulement en français. Mais si quelqu'un parle en anglais, cette personne n'a pas de carte et ça c'est vrai. Ça c'est dommage, mais on espère aussi que tout le monde décide d'aider ses amis. En français, on parle tellement bien. Notre rap est terminé, oui c'est la fin.
Okay, so that's called our entry rap, and we have one for high school or junior high, as in this case here. We have a different rap for primary students. We have a different rap and song for elementary students. So, but all of these raps, the purpose of this is to establish upfront every day the acknowledgement that we commit to using the target language only. AIM is very much an immersion style approach, even if you only have them 2 hours a week or 2.5 hours or even an hour a week. We want students to maintain the target language only, and every single technique and strategy that we offer in this methodology supports you to ensure that you can be successful at doing that. So one of these is just having a lot of fun through our rap, our entry rap, el rap de entrada en la clase or le rap d'entrée, to maintain that target language. I think I'll move forward. We have other dances and songs as well that support and retell the story in rhyme, rhythm, and music and dance, the story that we're working on. But I think we may just move forward a little bit because I know we have an hour here together. So there's a variety of different individuals who've looked at AIM, who've used AIM. As you saw in the first video, AIM is used in a variety of different languages, not just Spanish and French, but also English, ESL or EOL or English as second language, or Spanish and Mandarin and Japanese. This gentleman at the University of New Hampshire used AIM to teach adults English immigrants to the United States. We'll have just a peek at this.
If I had to choose, one thing that distinguishes AIM classrooms from more typical core French classrooms, it's the level of emotional investment that kids have in the process and the fun that they're having. And again, that's fuel that drives the learning process.
So they're very keen and they can apply. I guess the most remarkable point is that they can apply everything or a lot of what they've learned in a context, in everyday life context.
What we didn't anticipate would happen was that students in grade 4 with a sibling that was in grade 7 were going home at night and actually speaking French in sentences at the dinner table. And the feedback was very impressive from the parents that all of a sudden their kids were having conversations that they couldn't follow in French at the dinner table.
So it's kind of an interesting comment there. These children are going home and using this new language with their siblings, which is lovely when they can take it out of the classroom and make it really real for themselves. Just wonderful. So let's have a look at some students very early on in their journey with AIM. We said to them, just talk about anything and we're going to film you. So grade 8 students.
Et très fantastique.
Oui. Tu es toute seule maintenant. Et tout le monde a avec Melissa. Oui. J'ai oublié son nom. J'aime qui est peu de mes chanteurs. Est-ce que tu peux chanter ça maintenant? Ça va bien. Je chante. Très bien. Oh, oui? Est-ce que tu peux chanter maintenant? Non, parce que tu es très... oh oui.
Il y a 5 personnes dans ma famille, mais je pense que mon frère est un animal.
Well, as long as they can complain about their siblings in the target language, that's a good thing. So in the first excerpt, you saw the young guy trying to get the girl opposite him to sing for the camera. She didn't really want to. But what was interesting to see was that he knew he couldn't use English. And he's saying, you don't want to sing because you are, and he wanted to say embarrassed, I'm sure. But he didn't have the word. It's not on the low frequency part of our pared down language. So he didn't have it. But what was very nice to see is the girl next to him jumped in with tu as peur, which is great because that is part of our, the first story that we did with the students. And so it really illustrates, AIM is very much a cooperative learning based approach. We want students working together, interacting together, supporting each other, learning together. And so hopefully that's something that you saw there. Okay, so Pauline, would you like to talk a little bit about moving now from oral to the written? We certainly want students to do a lot of writing in this methodology.
Okay, so how do we do that? And that was one of my first questions when I saw the students speaking the way they were. How do we move from that to the written? Well, when we move into the written activities, as I said earlier, everything is done orally first. So for example, if we're doing one of the activities, during the teacher-led activities portion of my lesson, which might last about 10 minutes, depending on the group, we will go through all of the language orally first. So I'll just be gesturing and the students will be saying the words. So for example, I'll give you a quick example. Let's say I'm doing Les Trois Petits Cochons. So I would do something like this. I would go question numéro 1. Sorry, let me just move my camera a bit, just so you can see. Question numéro 1. Est-ce que le premier petit cochon habite dans la maison de paille ou dans la maison de briques? So the whole class is speaking orally with me. They're all producing language. I'm never speaking alone. So we all ask that question and we all answer it. Students might put up their hands, want to answer, but no, je dis tout le monde parle avec moi. Tout le monde répond à la question. So then we'll answer it. So it would be le premier petit cochon habite dans la maison de paille. So whatever questions whatever written work that I want students to be doing, it's always done orally first. And of course, we've recycled this language a lot already. So they're already familiar with all of those words because they are part of the pared down language and we've been using them over and over. So once we've done that orally, then maybe my next lesson will be modeling. We always do it all together first. And then I model the written work. So I'll have that question written on a piece of chart paper, or I'll have it on a slide, and we'll all read it together. So I'll have it written up and I'll point at the words, Est-ce que le premier petit cochon, and everybody speaks chorally. We read chorally. We speak chorally. Everything is done with everybody's, as I always say, their mouth should always be moving. So what we do is we read through the question and then I model for them how to answer it. And with the total questions, the beauty of them is that the answer is totally embedded in the question. So it's just a matter of underlining the answer and teaching the students to and then I will send it back to them to work on in their groups or in pairs. And so that's how we do all of the language manipulation activities, even the more difficult activities towards the end of the kit, that are like the creative writing activities, even the activities where we are retelling the story. And basically what we do with that language manipulation activity or creative writing activity is we're taking the script, which is presented to the students as a script, and we're rewriting it as a narrative. So we're taking out all the quotation marks, we're taking out all the dialogue, and we're rewriting it as a script. And all of that is done the same process. Everything is done orally first. It's done as an entire class, and then it's handed back to students to work on in pairs or in groups. Is that basically what you wanted me to explain now, Wendy?
Good, sounds fantastic, Colleen. Yes.
All right.
Yes, we always want the development of the written skills in tandem with the oral, for sure, because the better the oral language skills are, the better the written language skills, and not vice versa. So if the students are speaking well, they typically can write well, especially if we're looking at sort of a category 1 language where we share the same alphabet and similar sounds. There's an almost immediate transfer. If the students are speaking well in French, they can write. Same with Spanish. So let's have a look. What you're seeing here is students working, speaking, and writing together during that partner group activity time every day.
Il faut te mettre en salle et déchirer.
Est-ce que ça, c'est la même histoire, mais dans les mots différents? Oui. Dans les mots différents.
Qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire?
Est-ce que tu fais en partenaire?
Saute.
Beaucoup. Est-ce que tu fais
Et très propre.
Est-ce que tu fais ça?
Est-ce que c'est sans? Non, ça c'est juste une.
Tu fais ça?
Lui commence à marcher dans la forêt. Il espère trouver une amie dans la forêt. Elle a comme une détresse.
Entraîne de haut. Excellent. Entraîne.
Ici.
En 3 mots. En train de.
Après, il a triché.
Okay, so that's just to really give you an idea as to what the partner group activities look like. The students are talking all the time. They're interacting, they're communicating, they're practicing and applying those oral skills that they learn through the teacher-led work while the teacher is gesturing. The students are not gesturing. The teacher is not gesturing. It's a free flow of just communication and discussion as they are writing. So we do a lot of work on creative activities. So maybe, Pauline, would you like to just talk a little bit about what they're going to see here?
Okay, so this is a colleague of ours in Ottawa, and he was working at an inner city school. So it wasn't a top of the line school, it was an inner city school. And one of the activities that he had set forth for his students was to write their own raps, to own their own raps. And of course, he taught them how to do this. So you're going to see a group of fellows here who, this is their rap that they had written.
Okay, thanks. Here we go.
Aujourd'hui, la classe commence et tout le monde pense et danse. Quand j'entre dans la classe française, je ne parle pas en anglais, on parle en français, fantastique. Là, on gagne à Vietnam. Je parle en français, c'est très bien. Je fais les actions avec mes mains. En anglais, ça c'est vrai. Mot.
What I love about this is grade 8 boys in an inner city school, and they look so proud of what they are doing, so happy, really engaged. They've created this. And it's just lovely to see. And something I'd like to just mention here is that the reason why students can do this is through a very carefully scaffolded methodology that takes students from that initial, remember the rap d'entrée that I showed where all the older students were dancing, la classe commence, tout le monde est prêt. That is our model. Sort of, we provide a model for you. And then in the teacher's guide, we show you how to model with the whole class, the creative writing of a rap. And then subsequently, we show you how to engage students in creating this rap themselves. So AIM is an extremely scaffolded and very model-based approach. In order to reach the levels of success that students are able to reach, this is due to the fact that we are modeling extensively. So one thing that Pauline was talking about earlier is that sort of the tail end of every kit, we work on story retelling, and after step 2 kit, story extension, where students actually write their own stories, even at the end of the very first year of implementation of the methodology. So this is one of my students in grade 1. We had 30 minutes of French a day. At the time, the play Le Chat et la Lune was a simpler version. And so what I do is I model extensively. We model extensively over the course of about 15 classes or so, from start to finish, retelling the story in our own words, not repeating any sentence directly taken from the original story, which provides an opportunity for students to feel and understand and embed what it is to use circumlocution. Very important for a language learner to acquire this skill. So the student retells the story in his or her own words, and therefore it becomes their own story in a sense. They can add details. So through this literacy approach, we teach students to go from a simple retelling to a much more extensive and elaborate retelling with lots of added details, comparing what is the difference between a shorter, less elaborate story and one that does include a lot of details. The same approach is used. So I know some of you teach high school, whereas I was showing there a grade 1 example. The same approach is used whether we're working with a student who's 5 or 6 years old, or 55 years old or older. So, and everything in between. So here we have an example of a Spanish student after 75 hours of instruction, grade 11. So of course, what we're going to see from a from a grade 11 student is a more extensive story, lots more detail, lots more accuracy in terms of spelling. So where our expectations will be different of a grade 1 and a grade 11 student, but the one expectation is the same, that the student retells the story in his or her own words, without repeating any sentence directly from the original story, which allows for this deeply scaffolded approach while still allowing students to be creative. Japanese. I'm always amazed that even after a short time, the students have actually learned this many characters in the new language and can do their story retelling. Back down to grade 7. So again, first year of French, end of the first year, they worked on L'Arbre Ngali. And again, much more detailed and accurate than the grade 1 student, but the same process, retelling in their own words. And I know Joe asked, is there any questions?
Oh.
Yes,
Yeah.
Pauline.
Oh, I just wanted to say that, even after all these years of teaching with AIM, I am still amazed at the amount that students can write. And the fact that they can get so many ideas down on paper. It still shocks me to this day. And when I look at what you're showing here, Wendy, it's the same thing. I'm amazed at what they're able to do so quickly. And there's so many teachers that I have spoken to that have said the same thing. They're just kind of like, can't believe.
Oh, I think we
The
lost
early students that I'm teaching right now. My biggest thing for them is not so much spelling, because they're spelling phonetically. My grade 1s are still spelling phonetically. They're still spelling phonetically in English. So for my grade 1s, I don't worry about spelling, because honestly, that's the easiest thing to fix up, especially in today's world with spell check and all that stuff, right? So for me, the biggest thing, and even for my grade 8s, when I'm doing core French, it's not about them spelling perfectly. It's about them getting their ideas from here, being able to speak the idea and take it from their head and get it down on a piece of paper. I mean, all that other spelling and stuff we can deal with later.
Exactly. That's such a good point, Pauline. AIM takes very much a natural, or I would say a natural approach to the teaching of a language whereby we take students through the steps that we would normally take as a young child learning a language. We don't start off with grammar. You couldn't even begin to say conjugate the verb to be to a 1-year-old. It just wouldn't happen. So we take very much a natural approach. However, that being said, I know there was a question about the grammar. Grammar is deeply embedded in this methodology. We work extensively, not only on grammar, but on spelling and punctuation, because it is a literacy-based approach. So the way we work with grammar in AIM is through a 3-step inductive approach. First, we just get the students to feel and kinesthetically embed and view and hear the language and the grammar embedded in the language as it is. And then we start to extract the language patterns for the students. So the students begin to, on a higher level, realize what sounds right, what is correct, what isn't correct, just as we do in our own language. We know that we're correcting a little child. They shouldn't say I runned, they should say I ran. But what they had done was inductively extracted the pattern in language for the past tense. So students in AIM will naturally do that too. When they're at this point, we move to our second step of the inductive approach, where we review the language patterns in a very fun, engaging, rhythmical way. And then we move to the step 3, which is where we present the rules. So I'm going to give you an example of one of the rules for grammar, which is the infinitive form. So I've patternized down and regularized into one simple wrap all the words that signal the infinitive form. So this is the way it goes. Après à, comment, pour ou de, doit, aime, veut et aussi peut, c'est, vont, va ou je vais, c'est l'infinitif qu'on doit utiliser. So that's a verb. All those words in French are the ones that signal the infinitive form. So if the students, for example, are saying je veux faire ça, après à, comment, pour ou de, doit, aime, veut, après, veut, c'est l'infinitif. And these ones are more typically, these wraps are more typically used to correct their stories or other written language, but can also be effectively used orally as well. So just quickly, I know we don't have a lot of time yet. I wanted to show you the other types of stories that we do, which are called story extensions. And they're the most exciting stories with a very different purpose in mind. The students can be very creative. Again, scaffolded based on the original story. They're moving forward to tell what happens next, like some of the big Disney films with, you know, the part 2 and the part 3, what happens next after the story that we know. So here we have, they come to know les trois petits cochons, los tres cerdos pequeños, very, very well, the 3 little pigs. And so this is my grade 1 students writing this, and you'll notice very inventive spelling. But I am thrilled when I see this from a grade 1 student. Imagine 30 minutes of French a day, and they can write, après que le loup sort de les trois petits cochons, il va à la maison et dort et se réveille et marche à Loblaws, which is a grocery store, as he's still hungry. Et court et marche. Monsieur Loup est très fou et content. Et le loup frappe à la porte de la fille amie. Il dit à son ami, est-ce que tu veux danser avec moi? Oui, je veux, je aime toi. L'ami dit, est-ce que tu veux aller à ma maison? Le loup dit, oui, oui, je veux. Le cochon est ici, dit le loup. Now they're afraid of the pig. Elle court à sa maison. J'ai peur, dit la fille amie. Cours à sa maison. Oui, je veux aller à ma maison. Est-ce que tu veux aller à ma maison? Oui, je veux aller à ta maison, dit le loup. Je veux faire une fête, dit la fille amie. Le loup dit oui, 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 oui. And it goes on in terms of what the pigs want to do as they, the wolves do as they're still looking for food because they're still hungry. So is this perfect, spelling and grammar? No. But it's a student's first effort at a story extension in grade 1. They've only had maybe 100 to 150 hours of instruction. So there is plenty of time through grade 2, 3, 4. If they're writing 5 to 10 page stories, plenty of time to refine that language as we start to do it, as we model with the students and in their written activities from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. And I did see a question, which I don't know if it's a good time to respond.
We've had a couple of questions. Is that okay to do a couple of questions?
Yes, let's do that now.
Is that all right?
Yes.
So we've had one question around the signs that Pauline was giving a moment ago. Are those all specific to the AIM approach? In other words, are all teachers using the AIM approach using the same gestures? The reason that the person who's asked this question is saying, are the gestures corresponding to real signs in international sign language, for example, or are they all relevant to, or have they all been sort of made up by the AIM approach?
Some of the signs I developed are actually, I researched American Sign Language and La Langue des Signes du Québec to see if there were any signs that were really very natural. The main goal of these signs is not to teach sign language, but to teach the fastest sign that will give the students the meaning. So if an American Sign Language sign was great, I picked that. Some of the signs I developed with my students. So yes, the signs that the AIM teachers use are ones that are developed by me with my students and in conjunction with looking and doing some research. And the important thing to keep in mind when I was researching American Sign Language, for example, is they didn't always have grammar signs. In fact, rarely did they have any grammar signs. And I need the infinitive form, I need the past tense forms, I need the feminine forms, the masculine forms. So I had to develop those. They also didn't always have one sign for every single word. So sometimes they would have a male sign, but I need the il, the he, the elle, the she, the fille, the girl, the feminine, the feminine gesture. So I need a lot of different signs that represented different words. So that was why they are sometimes different. And even across languages, sometimes the signs have to be different because we don't have in French, well, in Spanish, for example, we bookend for example, the subject yo, and bookend it with the same gesture for the ending o. So yo camino. So then we can drop the yo and just do camino. Those differences don't happen it's different in French. So there are some differences, but yes, typically they're pretty much the same across languages.
Fantastic. That's a fantastic answer. Thank you so much. I've got another lovely question from a sort of UK perspective in particular, which is, would love to give this a go, but having to stick to topics from AQA, which is the one of the exam boards we have in the UK, for example. So this would be for students taking exams at the age of 16. So it'd be, say, from 14 to 16. If a teacher wanted to adopt an AIM approach for those sorts of exam years, one topic per half term, is that doable? What would you suggest? Or is this something you have to start when they're younger and then have a through approach, as it were, until they get to exam age? What would you suggest in that context?
We have teachers using AIM at every age. Of course, we take you from zero to what we call critical critical proficiency or critical fluency. When it comes to specific topics, I'd have to look into what the topics are and how in depth you must go with respect to knowing those topics. AIM develops an overall proficiency. So it depends, as I say, when it comes to the tests, are the exams testing for overall proficiency, like a DELF test, or is it more specific to a specific series, a set of vocabulary? In which case, then I would have to compare that vocabulary with what we have, and perhaps you could use AIM and slip in the words that perhaps are missing into the stories, into your questions, into your authentic language and spontaneous gesturing, which is very easy to do. So it would just be a matter of having a look at what those words are.
Fantastic. That's lovely. We have Emma Baines in the room with us right now, who is based in the UK, but did teach using the AIM approach in Canada a couple of years ago, if I remember correctly. So she has said a lovely comment in the chat. This brings back so many memories. I've recently done La Gelina Catalina as a mini version of AIM. I would really love to access more training live on the gestures to make this better. Can you publish upcoming training, please? So where would Emma where would she be able to find out about, for example, other live trainings that you offer?
Thank you, Emma, so much for your question. Thanks to all of you for your questions. So I did write in the chat, if you'd like more information about training or resources, you can contact Kathy at kathyp@aimlanguagelearning.com. So you could just copy and paste that email, and she'll be happy to help you out with that. We have ongoing, our next training is our Summer Institute, which love to see you there. It would be just fantastic.
Amazing. And for those people watching the recording, where would you recommend that they go? What would be the website they would need to go to?
Well, the website is actually aimlanguagelearning.com. So you can go there anytime. And you can also just email Kathy as well at and of course, if you want to join Parler avec Pauline, the AIM Facebook group, we'd love to see you there. A wonderful community. I think now, Pauline, around 2,000 AIM teachers all over the world ask their questions, just discuss topics around the implementation of the methodology. So there are a lot of different places you can go. But specifically for resources, it would be aimlanguagelearning.com, and Kathy with a K, Kathy P as in Poitras, Kathy P at aimlanguagelearning.com. So.
That's fantastic, lovely. I think one of the things I find most impressive about the AIM approach is the lovely pronunciation that the students have. I mean, it's just very, very impressive that you get, let's say, a child who, you know, is not that old, who's pronouncing the French beautifully. I remember when I was lucky enough to see Sylvia Duckworth teach in Toronto a few years ago now, but she taught a couple of lessons that I saw, and it was incredible the way in which, as you say, that the choral repetition, the pronunciation, the gestures, it was very, very impressive. So thank you so much. It's fantastic. Any other sort of final thoughts or final examples to tell us more about AIM? Yeah, well, I'll just skip through here. Sorry, I will. Oops, there was Sylvia there. I mean, we can have more time. We can have a bit more time, Wendy. There's no rush. Maybe just another 4 minutes or so. Yeah, absolutely. I have just a few slides to show you if you're interested in implementing AIM. To show you, we have a series of very comprehensive, I would say, AIM resources. And you can start at any age with AIM. You can start at primary. We have a set of resources for step 1 primary. We have a set starting at step 1 primary. We have a set of resources if you're starting students at age 8 or 9. So primary, I mean, ages 5 to 7. Next, ages 8 or 9, we have another step 1 kit. Ages 9 to 11 or 12, another step 1 kit. Ages 11 to 13, another step 1 kit, and ages 14 and up, another step 1 kit. So there's a broad range of entry points for AIM, whatever grades you teach. And in our kits, you have a program guide, an overview of the methodology, a teacher's guide with very, very in-depth scripts, explanations of every single activity with lesson plans and overviews, how to design your lessons. We have student books, big books with the story that are in hard copy and projectable, posters and image cards, hard copy as well, assessment activities books as well, especially for the older students. We have a series of DELF-like tests that examine overall proficiency levels that come with our new edition kits. And we have our student portal where students go and the teacher goes to look at the many, many gesture videos where they learn the gestures. They see the play acted. They can see many raps and songs, as you saw earlier, acted out and performed by students. There are projectable posters as well. There's an e-reader of the story with highlighted text, and you get logins for your students for that as well. We also have digital workbooks, student workbooks, and other resources as well. We can provide you with correlations to ministry guidelines if you're interested. We've made several correlations. And if you're interested in training, our next Summer Institute, we're having a couple of different dates, some for teachers in the United States in July and those in Canada, or you can take your pick if you'd rather come to July or August. We have trainings in July and August. So that is about it. Can I just ask, for the trainings, are they face-to-face or can you do them online if you're from overseas? Great question, yes. For now, they're virtual.
So anyone from anywhere can join us, and we often do have teachers from all over the world joining us at our institutes. We actually just this past weekend completed the second day of our winter institute, and there were teachers from all over. So love to have you join us. They're very interactive. Pauline is one of our facilitators there as well. And so it would be lovely to have you join us.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Wendy and Pauline, for giving us a fantastic insight in what AIM is all about and the successful strategies and those lovely videos that you showed us, showing the students speaking with great pronunciation, and all the way in which you explained how it moves from speaking to writing. I love that. I think it was very impressive to see how much the students were able to write based on the input and the storytelling, and yeah, I think it ticks lots of boxes in my brain. It really does. I think it's wonderful. I totally agree. The idea of having lots and lots of speaking input and then having the children play with the language and the impact that can then have on the writing. I think personally, I think that's exactly the way to go. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you so much, Joe. That's very kind.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Great. Okay, so I think we've done all the questions from the chat. That's been brilliant. A few people have had to go. Kathy was saying, so Miriam was saying that she had to leave because she was running out of battery, which was great. But yeah, so thank you so much. It's been a real privilege. It really has to hear the approach. And as I've said to everyone already, the recording will be up on my YouTube channel either this evening or tomorrow morning, so you'll be able to watch back. You'll be able to get in touch with Wendy and Pauline, find out more, sign up to the Summit Institute, join the Facebook group. There's lots of ways in which you can get involved and find out more about this fabulous approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, so much for inviting us.
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you face to face.
Nice to meet you as well. Absolutely, it's been great. I'd love to do this again. Brilliant stuff.
Thank you, everyone, for coming too. So nice to have you here.